Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Baggage Claim Unpack Your Bags with Dr. Danita. I'm your host, Dr. Danita, and I'm excited about tonight's episode of SMS Cures for Social Media Sickness. On the Baggage Claim Show, we seek to present relevant, everyday life topics that impact mental and emotional health in some way. And then we offer tips, we offer suggestions and remedies for wellness and wholeness. Social media sickness affects both the young and the old. There's loneliness, people experience isolation and anxiety and depression, and there's bullying on social media. It breeds social incompetence, all of the unrealistic friendship and relationship expectations, and then there's just so much more. This is a sickness that is spreading rampantly, and the Baggage Claim Show is here to address it. Before we go on live tonight, just take a moment to share, to like and share, and don't forget to head over to my YouTube channel at Dr. Danita Thompson and subscribe. Then don't forget to hit the notification bell. Are you ready? Let's go live. Well, hello, everyone. Good evening to you. As you are coming in, welcome again to Baggage Claim Unpack Your Bags with Dr. Danita. We're in for a treat tonight. We have a professional discussion that we're going to engage in on tonight. But before we do that, let's do what we do. Go ahead and begin to like and share. I have my devices here. So as you come in, comment in the device. If you are a comment, not in the device, but comment on your in the feed. If you are a fan, go ahead and let us know that you're a fan. Say, I'm a fan. And if this is your first time viewing, let us know where you're viewing from, even if you're catching the replay. Type in hashtag replay and then also let us know where you are viewing from. And so we do like to keep our shows active and full of engagement. And so we're just going to ask that you would type in your comments or questions, and we'll try to make sure that we are looking at the timeline, the feed, so that we can get your questions. So this season, we are talking about, the title is SMS Cures for Social Media Sickness. And so we've been bringing various topics to you for the past few weeks in reference to trying to determine whether social media is causing emotional sickness in various areas of people's life. And so we're going to bring on our guest for tonight. And tonight's topic is hashtag Asocial. We're going to be, hey, Dr. Angel, welcome to Baggage Claim. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Danita, for having me.
All right, and I'm going to have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you in a minute. But tonight we are talking about uh, social ineptness, or being socially incompetent, social anxiety. We'll talk a little bit about being people being socially isolated, and how social media can either impact that and possibly make people increase their social anxiety, or increase them being socially incompetent. But we'll talk about it as we go along. So thank you again, Dr. Angel. Let's meet Dr. Angel Wyndham. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
I am a therapist. I'm a social worker, licensed clinical social worker here in the state of New Jersey. If everybody didn't know that we're in New Jersey, um, I recently became Dr. Angel Wyndham. I am a graduate of Capella University, class of 2021, with my doctorate in social work. I have my own practice. It's called New Creation Counseling Services, started in May of 2019. I also do work in independent contract work with Mending Hearts Family Counseling as well. It is a privilege and an honor. I work with children, adolescents, young adults mostly. I do have some adults on my caseload too. But yes, my niche, I would say, is children, adolescents, young adults. And that comes from just working in a lot of school environments.
Mm-hmm.
I was a camp counselor at a Y when I was growing up, as a teenager. And that's just how I found myself working with children, adolescents, youth ministry, all of that,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
And an amazing counselor you are, working with
Thank
those
you.
children. We absolutely appreciate it. And even though I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, children are not. mm, mm,
You have
I
to have a lot of
absolutely,
patience.
yeah, you have to have patience, and it's just not for everybody. And so, and the other thing that, this not to get off the topic, but the other thing about working with children and that I haven't been able to um, move beyond is the parent wanting you to just fix the child and not
Mhm.
realizing that it's a systemic issue and
Yes.
that there are things that the parent needs to work on as well. But they just want to bring their children to you and say, fix them. And
Yes.
it's not always easy to get the parent to see that they're part of the problem.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but I'll take my couples any day, and it's what I absolutely love to do, and there's a demographic for everybody, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Do what we do and shine in the area that we enjoy most. Yeah.
Mhm.
So tonight, again, we're talking about this topic: asocial versus antisocial versus social
Mhm.
anxiety. And I was sharing actually 2 weeks ago. We tried to have this this episode, and we had some technical difficulties. And so I'm glad that you made it, that you were available to come back. Our other two guests weren't available tonight, so you got me and Dr. Angel on tonight. And
That's
so
right.
we started talking about this concept of asocial, and I was sharing that even as professionals, that is not a terminology that we typically use. But nonetheless, for our purposes tonight, asocial fits what we're talking about more than antisocial. In our
Mhm.
field, we usually use antisocial as a catch-all
For
all
everything.
for everything, but just to help our audience understand that there is a difference between asocial behavior and being antisocial. So let's talk about that.
Mhm.
When we talk about asocial, what is that?
Um, Typically asocial, you're withdrawing, you're isolating, you're not really wanting to have social interaction with others, you
Hmm.
know. Um, just really isolating. People may see it as someone who maybe the whole family comes over to the house and that child stays in the room.
Hmm.
That's the child that, may come and say hey to everybody, maybe not even, and they just stay in their room. They're being
Yeah,
asocial. They don't really want to interact with others.
yeah. And a lack of motivation to
Mhm.
be in a group setting or in community with family or friends. But when we think about anti, just the word anti means against. And so
Mhm.
usually when we're talking about antisocial, we're talking about those people who are deviant in behavior, against the norm for what behavior um, societally says that
Mhm.
how people should move. And so so tonight we're not really talking about those who have deviant behaviors and
Yes.
are antisocial. We're talking about those people who are typically withdrawn and, like you said, just kind of want to be off to themselves by choice. um
Yes.
yeah, yeah. And so when we think about so we said that we were talking about asocial, antisocial, and also social anxiety. So what's the difference
Mm.
between just choosing to withdraw and or someone who has been diagnosed with social anxiety?
So typically someone who's been diagnosed with social anxiety, they may have been in social settings and they may have had some symptoms such as their heart beating
Mhm.
fast, such as their
Mhm.
palms sweating, um, such as thoughts like nobody likes me, I'm talking or they're not talking. They may feel a little bit paranoid about being in that social situation. They may have had a panic attack before in a social situation. So social anxiety is is beyond, I would say, asocial, withdrawing.
Mhm.
This
Mhm.
is somebody who may have found themselves in social settings and they just had so much anxiety overcome them that they, were not able to maintain themselves in that situation, in that social setting.
Yeah. So just for education purposes, someone who is has a diagnosis is usually a person where the symptoms that they're experiencing affect their daily life. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, so people with social anxiety, more they have a fear. It's not just I don't want to
Mhm.
be around people. I don't, or I prefer to be alone. It's more of I have a real fear of
Mhm.
being in these social settings. And like you said, I'm getting heart palpitations. My hands are starting to sweat. I don't want to do that presentation. I don't want to stand in front of the class. I don't want to walk in front of that group. They're going to be looking at me. They're going to be
Mhm.
judging me. I can't, I just absolutely can't do it. And so when people are experiencing social anxiety, it really inhibits them from being able to be even productive in
Mhm.
many areas of life that they are required to do. I mean, you're in school, there's so many requirements that someone who experiences social anxiety has a really hard time, and sometimes actually fails out in certain
Mhm.
areas because they just literally cannot bring themselves to function in that regard. And so just we just wanted to help you understand the difference. And then there is social incompetence.
Mhm.
And so let's talk a little bit about what we see when people are socially incompetent.
So social incompetence, maybe the person is shy. They really can't be around others. They're kind of awkward
Hmm.
around other
Hmm.
people. You know, it's not to the degree of social anxiety. The person is socializing, but they're not necessarily appropriate in
Right.
their in the things they may say and do.
And they may not necessarily because a person who is socially inept or has social incompetence can also be found on the spectrum, but they
Mhm.
don't necessarily have to be on the spectrum. But these people do tend to have low ability to empathize. They don't make great connections with people in social settings. They could have difficulty reading cues,
Yes,
reading
social
social
cues.
cues,
Mhm.
yeah, and being able to stay connected in the conversation. They may take the conversation to other places and spaces, and people are like, well, that's not what we were talking about, like, well, where are you going with this? And so there were some other things that that when I was reading about people being socially incompetent, and this surprised me, but they put gossiping in that definition of
Mhm.
people being socially incompetent. And I thought that that was interesting. People being caught up in a whole bunch of drama. It's
Yes,
really
drama and gossip. Yes.
it's just really being unhealthy in their social behavior. And I hadn't thought about that to make that connection. So I thought that that was interesting.
I thought also was interesting was not being able to maintain friendships.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they did connect at some point and they able to make the friend, but not able to maintain the friendship. Maybe it's because of the gossip and the drama.
Yeah.
Who knows?
How about that? Or exaggerations. People struggle with being in relationships with people who are just not able to be real, and they just
Mm-hmm.
have to exaggerate everything and make things larger than life just to feel like they are being interesting, in the conversation. I don't know if you've ever been in situations or social settings with people who have to one up you in
Yes.
everything that, yeah, everything that you say. They have something better, bigger, grander
Mm-hmm.
than what you have experienced, and those things just don't make for good interaction. It actually gets on people's nerves.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think people recognize when they are socially inept or incompetent?
I don't think typically that people who are socially incompetent or socially inept, in my experience, realize it. And then it's at times when you do say to them as a friend, um, that may have been too much information, or this might not have
Mm-hmm.
been the right time to share. They'll say, something like, "Well, I was being real." You'll get that response. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
real this is me. I'm being authentic, but every time that we want to tell our truth or be real and authentic is not necessarily the right time to
Right.
tell it. And those people may not be the right people to tell your truth
Exactly.
and be
Exactly.
authentic with.
So people who are socially inept don't always have the ability to discern who they should divulge information to, who they should, connect with and, be buddy buddy with. They don't have that level of discernment.
Absolutely,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. you know um Sometimes people have to be taught social skills, not
Mhm.
just as children, adolescents, young adults, but some people that are I'm a grown woman or I'm a grown
Yeah.
man. You actually still need to be taught some social skills too, but they have to be open to it.
Right. Right. And so yeah, the first step is being aware, and then being aware enough to say, yeah, this is probably causing some problems in my ability to remain in relationships or friendships or
Hmm.
healthy settings. And so maybe I do need to do something about this. I was thinking also about the person that you meet in the grocery store that you see for 5 minutes and they can tell you their whole life. You've encountered those people,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Hmm.
They're everywhere. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so that also I would put in the category of being, socially incompetent and not realizing that you don't tell a perfect stranger your entire life. Yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah. There's bragging is an indication of low self-esteem, and so that also falls on in the
Mhm.
category. I'm just looking at my list here, cutting people off in the middle of their conversation.
Yes.
That also difficult to keep.
Interrupting.
Yeah. Interrupting people and not allowing them to finish out their thought. People that finish your thought for you. Yeah.
Which is really, it could be annoying to people because
Yeah.
sometimes, or a lot of times, the person is finishing your thought and it's not what you really wanted to say.
Exactly. Exactly. So we call it, someone trying to read somebody else's mind, but it just doesn't work for good interaction. Let me say
Mhm.
what I have to say. You hear what I have to say, and then we have dialogue about it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
when you said about this person in the supermarket, I had actually on my list oversharing. So people that
Mhm.
kind of overshare. So that's what I would consider that person in the supermarket telling their whole life story, that they're oversharing,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know.
And
So
then what about the one, would you put this in the category of being incompetent, the person that won't share anything?
I
Hmm.
don't know. I don't know whether I would put them in though back with the asocial. Are they not sharing everything
Hmm.
because they just are isolating, withdrawing? Or are they not sharing everything because, they don't know how?
Right.
They lack that skill to share.
Hmm.
It's a
So that's
difference.
a, that's the assessment that has to come in from, someone that would be working with them to determine, where, because there is a level of healthy sharing, and so
Mhm.
so yeah, that's a good point, whether they actually don't have the skill or it's a choice not to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, I've had clients before that have been selectively mute.
Mm,
And, they've been in session and they'll talk, but they may not go back out of the session and talk to anybody. Or maybe
right.
they're selectively mute that they'll speak with their parent, but, when they're in session, all I can get out of them is they're drawing stuff to me or they're
Mm,
writing stuff to me. So it's not that they lack the skill, it's not that they lack the skill, it's just that they didn't want to interact,
right.
for whatever
Right.
reason. Could have been some trauma or something that occurred that they just stopped, talking, that they
Yeah.
became selectively mute.
Yeah. Yeah, those though who choose, to remain quiet and, distant or not sharing, I think the part that they don't realize is how much of a level of discomfort it puts the other person in. That,
Mm,
I'm trying to connect with you, but you won't say anything. I'm trying to connect with you, but you won't open up, and the other person takes, some risk in sharing some personal information,
mhm,
but the one that you're talking to for the last 6 months trying to develop a relationship with won't open up at all. That you have you ever experienced that where one person shares absolutely none of their personal life, and you're trying to develop a relationship with them? It gets a little bit, for me, it I have experienced it feels a little awkward, like, I'm opening up to you, but you don't say anything.
mhm. So the friendship would feel kind of one-sided and would
Hmm.
feel very surface. That, that person, I really, after a while, would not feel comfortable still divulging things to them if I'm not getting that back in return, you know? And I would think
Hmm.
working with couples, Dr. Danita, that sometimes there may be a member that shuts down, that
Yeah.
is, withdrawn in the relationship. And probably that other person is frustrated by that. And then it's hard, I would imagine, for you to continue that relationship,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. It does get very, very difficult within, obviously, within a marriage situation. But I've had experiences. I mean, often opposites attract. And so there are, oftentimes that one partner is extremely quiet and the other one is like, I want to talk. We got to get this. We got to, I call it, one is the like steamroller. We got to keep moving in this
Mhm.
conversation. We got to keep talk. We need to talk. We need to talk this out. And then the other is like a turtle who hides their head in the shell. And so neither is appropriate. The steamroller approach to trying to get someone to engage in conversation is overwhelming and overbearing. But then the one who you can't get to open up their mouth and engage, that's also not fair within the couple setting. And so we talk about those things in marriage counseling, and meeting each other in that compromising way.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
So when we talk about, we've been talking and giving definitions and characteristics of social anxiety and social incompetence, asocial behavior. So when we tie this in with social media,
Mm.
Do you think that we can detect this social incompetence on, so like when people are interacting on social media?
Yes,
I was thinking about
yes,
that.
yes. So you can detect on social media when someone may have social incompetence or be inept, when we talk about the oversharing in the
Mhm.
supermarket. So some people may overshare even on social media. It may be too much. They may even share other people's concerns on social media. So it may be kind of crossing the line and, can cause a lot of different concerns
Mhm.
even with social media. Um, Sometimes there's some things that are said on social media or done on social media that has to even be pulled because it's inappropriate.
Mhm. Mhm.
People talk about Facebook jail or they talk about different they don't know what they did or whatever. Even playing music or something, you can get pulled from social media, um, and maybe it wasn't something that was inappropriate or inept or it was incompetence, but you can definitely see it play out. Sometimes you can see people arguing on social media,
Yeah, yeah.
on their timeline or something. They may go at this person or go at that person, but Instagram or Facebook is not the place for you to have an argument with somebody.
Right. And I would also put social incompetence in that same category of just being emotionally immature. And so you see a lot of emotional immaturity on social media.
Mm,
And people don't even realize how emotionally immature they are, and how adults can go, like we're talking grown adults, can go toe to toe in arguments with people, like you said, on social media, or people posting their feelings and or throwing off on people, side comments, and where it's just enough that people know, but you don't name the person.
mm.
And so all of that is falls in the category of emotional immaturity. And I would definitely put those two in the same category of being socially incompetent and emotionally immature. Would you agree?
Yes, yes, and
Hmm.
I really feel as though, I tell my young clients, "You have to be careful." I really feel as though people need to understand because once it's out there, it's viral. Once it's out there,
Hmm.
people can, copy it, people can save it or whatever have you, screenshot, and all of
Hmm.
this. And then later on, you're going for a job or something, and they saw that you put, maybe
Yeah.
some racial slur or something on your page, and then you don't get the job or whatever have
Hmm.
you.
Yeah,
And we've been talking
exactly.
a lot about Facebook and Instagram or something like that, but social media even spans to LinkedIn, you
Yeah.
know, um,
Hmm.
all these other platforms too, Twitter.
Hmm.
People don't think about what they're putting on Twitter, what they're tweeting.
Yeah. And LinkedIn is a prime place where potential employers will look to see what kind of content you are posting. And so, yeah, those are things that, again, people who are not socially competent recognize would even realize that this is going to hinder me down the road.
Mhm.
They don't even realize what they're doing is inappropriate.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, in staying with the whole concept of social media and its impact on people's social skills, do you think that social media ends up hindering growth and hindering people's ability to become more socially competent?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that it first starts maybe with texting, and
Mm-hmm.
then social media also kind of depersonalizes things. You can't really see, I guess, the realness, the sincere person
Right.
we see what the person posts. I heard
Mm-hmm.
somebody, I shouldn't say I heard somebody, I saw somebody post, you're not posting who you are, or something, you're not supposed to be, or something like that. And it was kind of just a play on how people will post about their lives, maybe the good things, or maybe the things they just want you to know. They're not
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
share necessarily, different things about themselves. So definitely, I think it does not help people to socialize with somebody one on one, face to face, if all they're doing is, social media. They're not really
Mm-hmm.
making a real friend or whatever have you. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. There was a professor at Purdue University, a professor, Dr. Glenn Sparks.
Mhm.
He wrote an article, and he was warning that social media can increase social awkwardness because the rules for engagement are very different from engaging face to face. And so, like you said, you don't get that reality of interaction. And so, social media creates what we would consider an alternate reality. And
Mhm.
so, we don't get that opportunity for the human face to face experience. And so,
Mhm.
he was warning that social media can actually increase social awkwardness. And I can't really think about a client that I possibly had, but I can imagine that when you're trying to develop skills with your client who is experiencing social ineptness, or or you're trying to grow them in that area,
Mhm.
especially working with children and teens,
Mhm.
you're trying to grow them in this area, and they don't move away from their phone.
Exactly.
So yeah,
So
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 go
I
ahead.
often I often recommend for sometimes even the children, but the teens definitely, to take like a social media fast.
Hmm.
Take a social media fast. I don't care if it's 2, 3 days, and just see how productive you can be in life. See how you reach out to people beyond, Facebook, Instagram. A lot of the teens, they like to use Instagram Messenger or even the Facebook Messenger, and they're using filters on there, and
Hmm.
they're not really, I don't know. So I say, why don't you take a social media fast, interact with your friends, interact with people in a different way, and see how that works for you, you know.
Now, do they really do it? Do you have any? I really want to know, because I cannot imagine any young person. I think I didn't hear the whole story, but my husband was a news watching the news, and it said a young person committed suicide because her mother took her phone away. I don't remember the storyline, but it's really, the situation is grave.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I have had some of the younger teens that will do maybe 2, 3 days. Older teens and young adults, they cannot live without their phone.
Mm-mm,
They
mm-mm.
cannot live without their phone. I think you
Yeah.
had a time where you mentioned about if you had your phone at home, then you would call and have somebody bring it maybe to the
Hmm.
office. But a lot of my clients, they would have to go back home.
Hmm.
Maybe if they were on the bus, they'd have to get off of that bus, that school bus, and go back home or something. They would not be able to live without that device,
Yeah.
you know?
It's it's one of those addictions that don't get it doesn't get the same uh it doesn't seem as grave, because it's not, deteriorating your body. It's not
Mhm.
drugs, it's not alcohol. So it doesn't appear to be as grave. And so it doesn't fall on one of those lists. But in my opinion, it should probably make the DSM. It should be in our diagnostic manual for,
Mhm.
because it really is it's an addiction.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
it should be on that list for addictions, and we should be able to We should be able to bill the insurance company to
Mhm.
help somebody work through social media addiction.
I had a young adult client tell me that it was sad for him to go visit family around the holiday time, around December, and most of his cousins that were around his age, 18, 19, they were just on their phone and
Mm,
nobody was really interacting. And he said, I put my phone up. I hadn't seen my family, in so long, but nobody was talking to anyone. They were all on their phone.
and that's a rare find, a young adult who would actually be able to say, I want to put my phone away and have some interaction with people.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a rare find.
Oh, it is, but he
Hmm.
had been craving it since we have been in a pandemic, and so he had been craving, interaction with his family. So,
Hmm. Yeah, and but I find that even though we're in a pandemic, I feel like people have just, primarily the young adults and teenagers, have just acclimated to it. They've
mhm,
acclimated to the fact that this is the way we interact, and as if that could be all they ever needed, was to interact via social media and not ever have, or very limited, personal interaction. It seems like they've gotten very accustomed to it.
mhm,
Survival of the
mhm.
fittest or something.
I
That's
don't
good.
know, but it's nothing like I believe face-to-face interaction with someone and not with a device.
Hmm.
It's artificial. It's
Yeah,
not, yeah. It's not the real thing.
yeah, yeah. And studies do show that there is a correlation between excessive amount of time on social media and loneliness. There will be people that say, this is the way I interact with my friends. I'm not lonely. I think that there are some people that don't even know that they're lonely. They've just become so, you can become accustomed to your way of living, and don't even have words for, because it's become your norm.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, kinda like someone who hasn't traveled outside of the US. They may think that this is all there is to the world.
Right. That's
But when
good.
they go to a different country and they get to experience a different culture, a different
Hmm.
lifestyle, then they can understand that, wow, the world is a much bigger place than maybe
Hmm.
New Jersey or New York or, going down south or something. When you go to South America or you go to Africa or you go someplace,
Right,
you
right.
know, and you travel.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good analogy. And so people who have given themselves, young adults, young people who have given themselves completely to social media, don't even know what they could experience in having real, interaction on a regular basis with other people. I was watching some of the teens get off a school bus today, and I'm a people watcher, and I watch people's interactions, and I can kind of like pick people out. And so a group got off, and one girl, she just started walking, and I mean, she's walking quickly, to get to her house, while the other part of the group that got off there, laughing and joking with each other. And I thought, she just got off this bus. She lives in the same neighborhood, same development,
Mhm.
with all of these other, and there was at least five other girls. She's just walking by herself, and I thought, wow, she's in school with them. She lives in the same neighborhood, but she's walking as if she does not even know them. And so I was just thinking, wow, I wonder if she's, has friends, if any of them, have are her friends. I just started thinking, I wonder if, she's, feeling lonely, that she's walking by herself and this group is all laughing and joking together. I wonder what her personality type is. All those things just came to me, in my counselor with my counselor hat on. But but yeah, so getting back to those who uh, find their lives on social media. Studies are really showing that um, this ongoing scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and looking at other people's lives does lead to loneliness, especially if you don't have a real friend group.
Mhm.
And so you can fall into that comparison trap. You can fall into that, if I post something, are people going to like what I post when my birthday comes along? How many people are going to say happy birthday to me?
Mm.
um, and all of those things are real, not for just young people but for adults as
For adults
well.
as well, yes.
Yeah, because when the birthday rolls around, people start, you know, with you can get two, three, 400, and then somebody else may get 10 people to say happy birthday to them,
Mhm.
and for some people that matters.
It does, it
Yeah.
does.
Mhm.
I find for some people, it matters for their self-esteem,
Mhm.
how much worth they feel like they have. If they don't get a like or they don't get a love or, somebody doesn't laugh at something, definitely,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
It's becoming a big thing now to TikTok. So if somebody posts something on TikTok, how many views do they get? How many people do they get that love it? Also reels, the
Mhm.
reels.
Mhm.
That those are things that people now are looking to I guess kind of engage others. And if they don't get the engagement that they were looking for, they they do feel bad about it. They
Yeah.
feel some type of way.
Mhm. Mhm. They feel rejected.
Yes.
Even seeing other people, if they are on social media and seeing other people involved in, friend groups or going out, because everybody posts everything that they do. And
Mhm.
so, they see other people that they know and they possibly didn't get invited to go to
Yes.
an event. So there's the rejection that comes along with that, seeing everyone else be celebrating and you didn't get invited. And you know that these people know you. And so it, what I have found in my conversations with people um, is that social media can create a level of sadness. It can create a level of loneliness, and even for those who are choosing to step back. Just because you choose to step back, I feel like we're all created for relationships. So somewhere within a person's heart, somewhere within their soul, even though they're choosing to step back and say, I don't want to be in this, that's your phone. You got a house phone? Who has a house phone these days? So even though that was funny to me, Angel. I haven't had a house phone in probably 15 years.
Yes, I have a house phone. I'm still old school. I'm still old school. I
All
have a
right
house
then.
phone. I admit.
Uh,
My name is Angel and I have a house phone.
That is funny. What was
This is
I
live.
saying?
This is live.
So yeah, so I think even people who say, no, I just don't want to be, I'm just not a social person, or I just like to be by myself. I feel like we're created for relationships. So
Yes.
I think even though those people are saying that, somewhere in their heart, somewhere, in their soul, I think that they wish that they uh, had it in them, to want to be or to engage a little bit more. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like some people that are the life of the party, but
Mhm.
at some level, I think that all people would crave and or desire at some level to, be in relationship,
Mhm.
with
And
other people.
interact, yes, and
Hmm.
relate to others,
Yeah.
and it is a need that we all have
Yeah.
to be in
Yeah.
community and have
Yeah.
support. Have
Hmm.
support, have love. That's definitely on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's definitely
Yeah.
something that we need.
Hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That community is significant. And that's one of the questions we ask when we're doing assessments in counseling. Who is your support network? Who is your
Exactly.
community? What do you find? Do you find that people are able to identify, especially in your age group that
In
you
my age
serve?
group, I typically get their parents, or maybe they have a good friend that, that they have as a support, or maybe they have another family member that's around their age, maybe a cousin or something. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. God help the day that somebody uh, identifies their phone or social media as their support.
Mm.
I just thought about that because that really has become, they may not say it, but that's really what people have resorted to using as their support community, social media.
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Google.
Hmm.
WebMD. When they got a
Hmm.
situation, they don't go to the regular doctor, they go to WebMD.
Hmm. And make themselves crazy over all the information that they see on
Oh
there.
yeah.
That, yeah, yeah. You go
Absolutely.
to WebMD, you could come out with feeling like you have at least five different diagnosis because everything fits.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I wanted to go back because I think I skipped over. You started to talk about a few of the things that you do with some of your clients that can help them develop social skills. And one of the things you said is to put away the social media for a time frame, fast
Mhm.
from social media.
Mhm.
But in addition to fasting from social media, then they have to actually do something to gain social skills. So, what are some of the things? And this could be across the board. It doesn't just have to be for young people because we
Yeah,
said that there are adults that
I've
don't have
spoken
good social
to young
skills.
people, young adults, and adults even to set limits. Set
Hmm.
limits for what you're going to receive and what you're going to put out there.
Hmm.
So just like you're in a friendship with someone, you set those limits, you set those boundaries of what you're going to put out and what you're going to receive. That's the same thing with social media. If you see something and it's not your spirit is grieved, you're vexed in your spirit after you read something on someone's timeline, you can unfollow that person. You don't have to keep them on your timeline for you to see
Hmm.
different things that you feel are going to offend you. And then also not putting out there certain things that may trigger someone else. It's best to call the person or meet with the person face to face.
Hmm.
You don't have to put that information on social media. So setting up limits for yourself, boundaries, limits for others, kind of talking about that with the clients is helpful because they'll say, well, this person said this about me. And so then I went back at her on her thing and said, okay, you know, if they said that about you, you didn't need to respond on social media. If you felt like you needed to respond, you could respond to the person to their face or call or whatever,
Hmm.
but not necessarily do you have to do the same thing that person did. Kind of like you don't have to stoop to their level,
Hmm.
and like you said, sometimes people are just not aware of how
Right.
they should act or behave. But if you know how you should act or behave, then you need to continue to do that, you know and we need to be aware of
Hmm.
our triggers
Yeah.
too. A lot of my clients, I say to them, you got to be aware of your triggers. And if this is something that's triggering you, how do you manage? And so that way the person doesn't know. Kind of like when you were growing up and somebody knew how to push your buttons.
Hmm.
You didn't want to let them know how to push your buttons because if they learned that this is what makes you angry or makes you upset, they will continue to do it. So that's the same thing with social media. I tell my clients, if that person did something that pushed your button, you don't go back at them like that because then they'll know I can always do this
Hmm.
to
Because
make
this is
to
what,
make them
yeah.
upset, right?
Hmm.
So then they'll
Mm-hmm.
continue to do that. You give away your power,
Yeah,
you know?
that's good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I
So,
didn't see any questions in our
okay.
feed tonight, but and we're coming close to the end.
Okay.
But we'll say hey to Whitney and hey to Kevin and Angel Joe.
Oh, I think
Thanks.
my husband is saying something. He said, "Are people with social anxiety born with it, or have they had a traumatic experience?"
So is did he post that in the feed?
Yes, he
So
did.
I don't know why I am not seeing all of
Yes.
the I'm not seeing all of the comments. So okay, so I'm sorry. He said, are people
Are people
born
with social anxiety born with it, or have they had a traumatic experience that they have the social anxiety?
right? So I believe it could be both.
Mhm.
Yeah, so definitely, people could social anxiety can be triggered or exacerbated by someone having a traumatic experience because the brain, the right side, your emotion center, it
Mhm.
is the right side of your brain, and when a trauma happens, your
Mhm.
emotion center kind of gets hijacked, and
Mhm.
wherever you were left at that time of the experience,
Yes,
it can stay with you, that feeling, that traumatic feeling that you experience. So anytime you go into engage in something that looks like, sounds like, smells like, feels like that experience, you're going to feel it the same way in that at that level of anxiety. So yes,
exactly.
yeah, it could come from. But now that I've been studying more of this functional approach to healing, I'm learning that a lot of what we experience, although science says that it's something with faulty wiring, some of it can be toxins in our system that causes our brain to operate differently. And so I'm learning that the way in which we eat could also escalate our emotions in ways that don't have to be escalated
Mhm.
if we were eating properly. And so it could come from various places, but that's a good question. Thank you, Frank, for asking that question. And if you
Mhm.
see any others, because I don't see the question.
Let me see
So
if
if
there's
you see
anything
any
else.
others,
Yeah, that came up on my screen, so I don't know if there's anything else here in the feed. I do want to also say there is some science behind what you just now said about someone experiencing something and then it's staying with them and them staying, maybe at that
hmm,
age or that development,
yeah,
um,
arrested
you know,
development, yeah.
arrested development.
Hmm.
And so when we have these, they call them ACEs, these adverse childhood experiences,
Yeah.
the more we have, the more traumatic, things
Hmm.
could be. The more
Yeah.
ACEs we have, the higher our ACE number is. So there's assessments that can even be done as far as in reference to trauma.
Yeah.
I I don't know if I see anything else.
Okay.
I don't
And
exactly know.
there's treatment for that while you're looking. There's treatment for that. You don't have to stay. You don't have to remain socially inept. You don't have to remain with social anxiety. There's treatment for all of that. And so I would suggest that anyone who is experiencing high levels of social anxiety, at some level, anxiety is good. It keeps you motivated. It keeps you moving. It keeps you, being able to be productive. But
Mhm.
when anxiety, when it causes you to get to the place where it hinders your ability to do daily life, then
Mhm.
then you want to, address it. You want to get help.
Yes. I didn't know that there have been some comments by my husband. Thank you, honey. He's saying good job to us. And
Oh, thank you.
he said social media can be a stage show sometimes. And he also said, I don't have time for Facebook beefs. which
Well,
which do
that's
happen.
good. That's
Beefs
good.
do happen.
They do. Among adults who are supposed to be emotionally healthy. Angel Joe said, "What is ACE again? ACEs again? Can you share that
Okay.
again?"
Angel, adverse childhood experiences. And you might actually be able to Google it and get the assessment. It may be actually free that you can take to see what your score, what your ACE score is. It's adverse childhood experiences. Maybe I can put it in the chat. Adverse. I mean in the thing
In
here.
the feed. Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, as I stated earlier, we're coming close to the end. So, as I stated earlier, we're created for relationships. I believe that wholeheartedly. We're created to be in family groups. We're created to be in friend groups and in community, in school, at work, and so. Um, when I was studying, when I was in school, getting my degree for marriage and family, I remember reading that emotional IQ was much more important than intelligence, and we place a high value on intelligence. But if you can't get along with people, employers don't want people that can't get along with people and can't do teamwork and,
Mhm.
can't have valuable conversations with people that they need to solve problems with. You can help people learn a skill, but it's much more challenging in a workplace to help someone learn how to grow up, and how to be emotionally secure, or
Mhm.
how to, get along in social settings. And so it's important. I can give you some tips for people who struggle in social settings. Is observe other people who seem to navigate life well in social settings. Observe the people who are adept in socializing. Check their body language. What watch how they move. Check their facial expressions. I noticed that some people, people who have that nervous laugh and they laugh at things that are not funny,
Yes.
that can be very off-putting. So just paying attention to people's body language so that you don't laugh at things that people are actually showing that they're sad or in pain, or and it's not a laughable situation. And so paying attention to what people's expressions are. Check how people interact with other people. What do they do when they're in groups? Those are our other suggestions for growing up in this area of competence, socially. Um, I would say that it's important to be an active listener. And we talked about how people cut people off. Go into the conversation being intentional. I need to wait and listen until the other person actually stops. Now, that's not always easy because there are some people that just don't stop. But it is important not to just jump in and finish people's sentences, and take the posture that I'm trying to grow in this area. If you're trying to grow in any area, you have to be intentional about it. It's not going to just happen, just because, or by osmosis. And so learning to be an active listener, you give affirming nods,
Yes.
you are, eye contact. I notice that people who are socially incompetent have a difficult time with eye contact.
Mhm.
They stare, and they kind of, or they pace while they're supposed to be in a conversation with you. Being on your cell phone while you're in a conversation is rude. That's social incompetence. You cannot be on a cell phone and having a real conversation with someone. And so these are just a few tips that can take a person far in this area of, being able to be socially competent, or grow in this area of social competence. Strike up conversations, with people. Try to engage in small talk, and
Yes.
and
Mhm.
pay attention to your own body language. Pay attention to how much space you give people. That's part of social competence as well. Not coming up to people like this, making them feel uncomfortable. So those are a few tips. If you find that you have been really struggling to maintain friend groups, it could be because your social skills are a little off. And so I know that a good therapist can help. And we all need to be able to engage and be able to stay in social settings. You don't have to live in a social setting, but there are times that it is appropriate to be able to exercise good social skills. So, with that, if there's anything else that you want to add, thank you, Angel Joe, for joining us tonight. I'm glad that you got something out of tonight's episode. Go ahead and share so that your friends and family can as well. What do you want to, or do you
No,
want
I
to
just
close
think
out
this
with
was
anything?
a very good topic, Dr. Danita, to discuss. I think even going forward, this is something that needs to be discussed more often. Social
Hmm.
incompetence, the impact that social media has on, making those personal relationships, making those connections. It's a very important topic that
Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to develop in the future, you know.
Hmm. Yeah. um it could get scary, and I'm gonna just say this, it could get scary because we as even though we as adults don't statistically don't spend as much time on social media as young adults do, I find that parents allow social media to be their children's babysitter. It just
Mhm.
makes it easier for them. And so I'm not sure it's going to get any better because since it makes it easier for them and life is so stressful for the parents, now they have built-in babysitter in social media. Um, I'm not sure how it's going to get, any better. But yeah. But one or two can make changes, and so we just make
Yes.
changes in the manner in which we can,
Mhm.
right?
Thank you
Yeah.
for this discussion today.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and we're gonna have to have you back. I'm sure it's gonna be by popular demand. This was a great conversation, and so yes, we look
Are you
forward
seeing the
to.
comments? There's a lot of comments coming through.
No,
This
I'm
was very
not.
helpful information. Tawana, Giddens Prilo.
No, I don't
Whitney
see
said,
her.
what are you saying, Whitney? It went by too fast.
I think may
Oh, I'm
are
the
you on
friend
the
that
business
needed
page?
I'm the friend that needed these tips tonight. This has been super helpful. Thank you, Dr. Danita and Dr. Angel. That's from Whitney.
Oh, thank you.
Um,
I'm so
Frank,
frustrated that I can't see the
quick
comments.
comment, social media can desensitize us to people's real bad experiences.
Yeah, that too.
Courtney
Yeah.
Anderson, what are some negative coping skills that hinder people from addressing healing their anxiety? The negative coping skills, Courtney?
Oh,
Um, she said, what are some negative coping skills that hinder people from addressing healing their anxiety?
I never think about coping skills in a negative perspective. When I talk coping skills, I always talk about it
That's why I said negative
in a
coping skills.
positive perspective.
I
So,
mean,
um,
if they're not addressing or healing from their anxiety, and I guess you're talking about social anxiety because that's what we've been talking about, Courtney. I'm not sure,
well,
um,
I would go
but
ahead.
I would say that the whole isolating and keeping the cycle going, withdrawing, is a negative coping skill. You're
I
not
would say
coping
social
with
media
the
is a negative
situation.
coping
Yeah,
skill,
social
right?
media.
Hmm. Eating.
Yeah, and so maybe Courtney, that's why I often will say for people to take that social media fast. I've even challenged a family to do it before, and they did it for a couple of days.
Oh, that's good. And hopefully they implemented something as a family to
You guys are keeping this going. Whitney's
oh
got a question. Do you find that
I
some
just
people
need to be able to find it.
lean on toxins to cope with those social challenges, like drinking to be comfortable in social settings? I think what Dr. Danita earlier, Whitney, had touched
Oh, I
on
see
when
it
she
now.
talked about the things that people eat, But yes, things that people drink. When you say toxins, I guess you're talking about also drugs that people,
Drugs,
can use.
alcohol,
All of that. Yeah.
sugar, carbs, all
Yeah.
create toxins in your body, and those are
Mhm.
comfort foods. So yes, people go for the cake, they go for the ice cream, they go for everything that would bring comfort to them in the moment. But then the crash,
Mhm.
you crash from sugar just like you crash from drugs. And so
And
yeah.
you know what? I didn't think about it, Whitney, when you're saying comfortable in social settings. That might be also, Dr. Danita, to those people's detriment if they're eating and drinking and doing all this stuff and they may be gaining weight, or, they may feel sick after the social setting,
Hmm.
because of what they had.
Yeah.
So,
There's so many ways in which you can that this extends. So you're
mhm,
talking about feeling bad in social settings, or being able to remain in communication, or remain um, socially adept, or whatever,
mhm,
in the conversation. And so remember at the conference that I did, and I talked about how my brain was always so foggy because I ate so much sugar and had so many carbs,
mhm,
and I I struggle with the ability to have a fluid conversation. And so it may not necessarily be always that you are socially inept, but because I struggle to have a fluid conversation, I would become self-conscious.
mm,
And so I rather not even, engage, especially professionally. People are, talking and throwing, their vocabulary around, and I can't even think of a simple word because my brain is so fogged. And I'm saying, no, I'll just stay away from that setting. And so it wasn't that I necessarily didn't want to socialize, but I felt insecure in certain social settings. And so this could go really far. This conversation could go long. Yeah.
but we're going to end the show.
Yeah. We're gonna end the show.
Thank you, Angel. She said that she learned something. Thank you,
Oh,
Angel. That's
great,
great.
great.
Oh, and thank you, honey, for the hand claps. Okay. They're putting stuff on this feed and we trying to
Okay.
end.
Yeah, so I went out and I came back in. So I see Stacy. Stacy said that she believes that that people's lives are in fantasy when they're in social
Mm,
media, and
good
that's
point.
true. That's true. That is a good point. Yeah,
Good point.
yeah. All right. Oh, we talked about gut health. Yeah, gut health is an important factor. Yeah. And that's what I was talking about, being foggy in my brain. It was really had to do with my gut health, and gut and brain are connected.
They're
And
connected.
that, yeah, and that's education that people really need to have, because even as we work with our clients, if their guts are nasty, a lot of the things that we're trying to help them improve emotionally, it's being counter it's a counterproductive situation going on,
Mm-hmm.
because their gut is so so dirty that it keeps their brain from being able to function, and keeps their emotions from us being able to help them through their emotions. And so yeah, it's just things that I have been considering in working with my clients. But thank you so much again, Angel. We're going to end now that we are at 8:45. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on tonight. And please do continue to share and invite your friends and family back for another episode next week on Baggage Claim Unpack Your Bags with Dr. Danita. Thank you again. Have a good night.
Good night.